his political predicament and his pride.
Todd McClay.
Speaker, the court found that the minister acted within the powers of the law. Now, the Labor opposition may wish that he acted against the law. They may wish that he broke the law, but the fact of the matter is he didn't. And this is nothing more than muckraking by the Labor opposition and scaremongering by that Labor opposition. And we've had a lot of that over the last 4 years. And here's the challenge that we have, because the Labor Party position, Mr. Speaker, is political hypocrisy of the worst type. First, they tell us they're against selling land to foreigners. But what happened in their 9 years of government? 666,000 hectares was sold to foreign interests. 666,000 hectares sold to foreign interests. And their number one cheerleader, their spokesman that got up on this issue, David Parker, when he was minister, for a short period of time on this issue, sold 240,000 hectares of land to foreigners, all by himself. Now, under this government, in a 3-year period, 1/6 of what Labor did has been allowed to be sold to foreigners, just over 100,000 hectares. David Parker, 240,000 hectares, all by himself. I know what he'll do when he leaves this place, and it will be to do with real estate sales in the rural sector. Now, Mr. Speaker, they've since changed their position. They're no longer against foreign investment and the sale of land to foreigners, just some foreigners. You see, they say the Chinese no, but other nationalities yes. We've heard them say in this debate, no, that's not the case at all. But the Chinese know. Some Canadian filmmaker who wants to buy some land, some dairy farms in the Wairarapa, well, that's okay. When David Shearer was asked about this, Chinese no, but didn't have very much to say when a Canadian filmmaker from the Wairarapa wanted to buy a couple of farms. Now, this man, James Cameron, made a wonderful film almost everyone in this House would have seen. And you know what the Labor Party has in common with that film, The Titanic? They're in disarray and they're sinking without trace, and that was the message that came from that film. Now, 10,000 hectares of land was sold under the stewardship of David Parker when he was minister to John Shipton, a UK businessman, a money man, High Country Farms stations in Canterbury. Who was it that sold that? Who signed off on it? David Parker again. So here we are, Mr. Speaker. Chinese no. Some Wairarapa filmmaker from Canada, yes. Chinese no. A businessman from the UK down in Canterbury, yes. And even worse than that, Mr. Speaker, do you know what happened in that farm deal of the tens of thousands of hectares of land in Canterbury? The rights of everyday New Zealanders who used to go to that highland in the summer to camp and recreate was taken away when that minister at the time, David Parker, signed that piece of that agreement into law. The rights of New Zealanders were taken away, and that concerns me greatly. David Parker also mentioned forestry. And he admitted in the House that he allowed forests to be sold to farmers and to foreign enterprises. Now he bleats that Labor have learnt their lesson, and Mr. Speaker, it's too little, too late. It's the Labor Party sideshow. They have no interest in growing the economy. They have no interest in foreign investment. They have no interest in mining. And what do we find? The only interest they have is restricting nationals of some countries, the Chinese, not the Canadians, not the US, and certainly not from the UK. Now, Mr. Speaker, this was a private sale of private interest. This was private land in New Zealand, and it was a private sale. And what the Labor opposition are telling New Zealanders is they want to start telling them who they can sell their houses, their farms to, who they can't sell them to, and for what price. And the government has no right to be involved in the New Zealanders' business, their interest in that respect. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Parker said that he wants to live in a country where share milkers can buy their own farms. And hear to that. But the 9 years of the Labor government didn't do a single thing to back farmers in this country. They screwed them with the ETS. They screwed them with compliance. They tried to turn New Zealanders against farmers. Michael Cullen, remember him saying the reason interest rates were so high and exchange rates were so high is those greedy farmers were making far too much money overseas. Remember the last election, just before the last election, when they said to farmers and rural New Zealanders, they said that farmers don't pay any tax. They're not bearing their weight. They're not doing enough for the country. And what happened, Mr Speaker, at that election? They hold one seat in rural areas in provincial New Zealand, one seat down on the west coast of the South Island, where they're actually still probably against mining on the other side of the House. Well, farmland, and then we see that Mr Shearer and co have been doing a farmland tour of provincial New Zealand, getting out and equating themselves with these parts of New Zealand. They have no representation. Can I tell you, Mr Speaker, their tour over the last week or two around provincial New Zealand has nothing to do with provincial New Zealand. It's the development of a tourism policy, because they haven't been there enough, they don't know much about it, and they were having a good look around when they were there. That's what that was about. Mr Speaker, what I finally want to say on this bill is, on this issue is, do you remember David Shearer, a few days after he became leader of the Labour Party in the opposition, standing by himself in front of a farm on the edge of the Taupo electorate, a Crafar farm, and he said he would bring a bill to this Parliament that would fix this issue. Well, can I say, the only thing more invisible than the invisible man is any benefit from that invisible bill that he wants to be here. Because when he was questioned at the time about what it would do and where would the bounds be and what would the scope of it be, he said, we haven't worked out the detail yet. So that's what we know about the Leader of Opposition, the invisible man with invisible detail, with an invisible bill that will deliver absolutely nothing for this country. Mai Wang, the lady who wanted to buy some farms that the Minister legally turned down, go and do a poll in New Zealand. I bet you her name recognition is higher than the invisible man, the Leader of the Opposition, David Shearer. Absolutely guarantee it. Now we have Russell Norman, who said that he's against the sale of these farms. Now, actually, to be fair to Mr Norman, he's against most things that most reasonable people say they want to do. But I think the real reason that Mr Norman is against this, he's under some misconception that a few years ago the Chinese tried to steal his flag. You remember that? Waving it around, give my flag back, give my flag back. This is about investment in New Zealand, something that party is against. This is about backing New Zealanders to help us get on and grow the economy, something that party is against. I want to say to you, Mr Speaker, and to this House, this was a legal act. The Minister acted within the bounds of the law. Those farms are still here and they will still be here. The opposition may not like that. They may not want it. They may not want the Chinese to be buying farms in this country. It's okay for other nationalities, but the Minister has acted within the best interests of this country, within the law, because this is a lawful government. Thank you.
Yeah, good speech.
There is one 5-minute call remaining. David Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I just want to take a little bit of a different tack from what we've heard